guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. As promised, I wanted to do my labor story, so I finally found time to sit down and talk about it. So anyways, I just wanted to jump right into the labor story. So kind of gonna backtrack a little bit before I get fully into the labor story, just in case for some of you who haven't watched my previous video where I talked a little bit about getting high blood pressure. I was going in for my 35-week checkup. And at this point, I had not ever gotten a high blood pressure reading. I've never, not in before I was pregnant and not while I was pregnant. Never had I had a high blood pressure reading. So when I went in, of course I wasn't expecting anything, but when they took my blood pressure, they were like, oh, your blood pressure is really high. And I thought that was really weird. So we did the regular checkup, 35-week checkup appointment. And at the very end, they were like, we need to take your blood pressure again just to make sure that it went down. And it did. So 35 weeks, I got my very first high blood pressure reading and then it went down. So that was fine. I just thought it was kind of weird. Maybe I was just being stressed out for certain things that were going on, or, you know, whatever it might be. Just that day, I thought maybe it was just like a fluke. So after that reading, I had another appointment, and it was, my doctor was going to be out of the office for 36 weeks. So what happened was, I was supposed to come back in like another, I want to say at this point I was still in my 2 weeks, like every 2-week appointment. I hadn't gone to 1 week yet. And for the week that she wanted me to come back, she was completely full. Like, I think she was on vacation or something, and she was only there for like 1 or 2 days, and it just wasn't going to work out. So she had me come back in earlier, which the only available appointment she had was like 4 days later. So I was like, okay, that's fine. We'll just take that appointment, right? So January 5th, we go in for that second appointment, and they take my blood pressure again, and it's high. And I was like, no, another high blood pressure reading. So this is 2 high blood pressure readings. And again, my doctor and the nurse were kind of like, well, that's weird that you're having another high blood pressure reading. So they did the same thing. They took my blood pressure in the beginning, which was high. They did the regular appointment, and then they went ahead and took it again at the end. Well, when I took it again at the end, it didn't go down. So this time they were like, okay, because your blood pressure is high, we have to send you over to triage. Triage is like in the labor and delivery unit, but it's like these smaller rooms where they put the little contraction monitor on you, they put the baby heart rate monitor on you, and then they put a blood pressure cuff on you. And the blood pressure cuff goes off every 15 minutes, and you're there. I mean, we were there for like 8 hours almost, maybe 6 hours, and they're constantly checking it to see how your blood pressure is doing. So once they went over there, they did the same thing. Like, they check your blood pressure before they hook you up to everything. And then they have you switch out of your clothes into this like gown, and then you just lay in this bed hooked up to all those things, and the reader constantly is going off, checking the baby's heartbeat, checking your, you also have the pulse, the heart rate pulsing on your finger. So I had that too. It was just hooked up to everything, and they just monitor you. And so my blood pressure never went, it kind of stabilized basically at that point. So another major thing was that this was January 5th, which our baby shower was January 6th. So I was worried that they were going to admit us into the hospital because my blood pressure was high. So I felt like maybe that was also causing my blood pressure to be pretty high, because I was just stressed. We were going to have this baby shower, and then we weren't even going to be able to make it because I was going to be in the hospital. So sure enough, when they came back, they said that my blood pressure stabilized and that I can go home. But what I would need to do is buy a blood pressure cuff and monitor my blood pressure, and if it hit a certain range, then I would need to come back. So we left the hospital, and we went home, and we got ready. We got everything ready for the baby shower. We had the baby shower, and sure enough, on the 7th, which was the day after the baby shower, that evening, I checked my blood pressure again, and it was really high. And so we packed everything up, went back to the doctors, and it went back to triage. And they took my blood pressure, and they're like, yeah, your blood pressure is really high. We'll go ahead and lay down in the bed. They got me all hooked up and everything again. And they even put an IV in, because they said that they were going to potentially have to induce me starting then because it was so high, which was really scary. So they put in the IV, which I hate needles so much. Every time I went in, they would pull blood to take labs just to check everything because they were worried that I was going to get preeclampsia. But the only symptom I had for preeclampsia was the high blood pressure. I didn't have headaches. I had no stomach pain. I didn't have blurry vision. I didn't have, I had swelling, but the normal swelling, like normal, my face wasn't swelling. My hands weren't swelling too bad. They were just the normal swelling. And of course your ankles or your feet. And my feet were a little swollen, but not anything to be alarmed by. So I didn't have any of those other preeclampsia symptoms, but they would take your blood and check your blood panel to make sure that you aren't having any major signs of preeclampsia internally in your bloodstream. And, you know, they would take a urine sample, and I did get a positive rating for protein. So that is the other thing that they were concerned about, was because they found protein in my urine. At this point, we go back to triage. They do all of that again, but my blood pressure stabilized after they gave me the IV. And a lot of times what happens for me is when I either give blood or they like prick me with a needle. I don't know, I have this like fear, this panic, anxiety, I don't know, but my blood pressure always drops. So sometimes it drops too much to where I turn like pale white, or I might pass out, things like that, which is pretty scary, which I hated having to give blood as much as I had to give the entire pregnancy. I was always, a fear of mine was that I was going to pass out while pregnant. So when they gave me the IV, my blood pressure dropped and then it stayed down. So they ended up not even putting me on blood pressure meds. They did not end up inducing me. They again sent me home because their whole goal was to get me to 37 weeks. And at this point, I was probably closer to 36 weeks. They did not want to induce me, but if my blood pressure was going to continue to go up in the severe range, they were going to have to, because I guess that causes, like, it can cause a lot of issues, like seizures and stuff like that. So they took out the IV and then they sent us home. And it was about, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning. They said that I would get a call the next day to set up appointments because I had to start going to the high-risk clinic twice a week so that they can go ahead and check my blood pressure and then monitor the baby for like 45 minutes to an hour every Tuesday and Friday. And then on top of that, I still had my normal OB appointment every week. So I was having 3 doctor's appointments a week going forward, pretty much. But in this particular upcoming week, I had 4 because my doctor had set up a ultrasound to see if the baby was a good size, just in case I needed to be induced, she would be okay, and check her development to make sure everything was looking good if we had to go forward with induction. So I went to my first high-risk appointment. They checked my blood pressure. It was higher, but not in the severe range as it had been. It was just elevated. So they just made me drink water. They monitored everything. Everything looked fine, and then they sent us home. And then the next day we had the ultrasound. So we went in for the ultrasound. They checked the baby. They made sure everything was fine. They said that she was between 7 and 8 pounds at this point, but overall her development looks great. If we had to induce, it would be okay. So we were like, okay, well, that's good. It was good to, you know, see the heartbeat and see that she was doing good. That just gave me a peace of mind. So after that appointment with her, the high-risk doctor came in and she said, we want to schedule you for an induction. You could end up potentially going earlier than the date that we're scheduling you if your blood pressure continues to rise, but we would like to set a goal of January 15th as your induction date, because at that point you're going to be 37 weeks and we feel comfortable being able to induce you at that point. And so I was like, okay, cool. You know, my parents were flying in on the 15th. They moved from Hawaii back to California, Northern California. And I, you know, was like, okay, if they're flying in, that was a Monday, I believe. So that night, the baby probably won't be born until probably like the 16th or the 17th. So I was like, that should be fine. It's just my parents are going to be flying straight from Hawaii and coming straight to the hospital. But it kind of worked out, you know. So I was like, okay, that's cool. But I still had to go to the other appointments that I had scheduled. And of course, if my blood pressure was coming back in severe, I would have to go in for the induction earlier. So We went home knowing that we were going to have the induction scheduled for the 15th, which kind of gave me a peace of mind because I didn't have to keep stressing about the blood pressure. The stress that it put me under, I feel added to the reason why my blood pressure was elevated, most definitely, because I was constantly in fear that something was going to happen to the baby or something was going to happen to me because of how high my blood pressure was. And also I've never had high blood pressure, so I didn't know anything about it. Kind of took away from the enjoyment of the end of my pregnancy, which I wasn't ready to not be pregnant anymore. I enjoyed my pregnancy. My pregnancy was great all the way up until this blood pressure thing happened, and it just wasn't, I just felt like I wasn't ready to be done yet. So we made it through all the way until the 15th, so that was great. Come in. So we went in on the 15th. They give me, it's a little pill. Let's see. It's a small white pill. They like cut it in half and they only gave me like half of it. But because it was already, at this point I was 37 weeks and like a few days, my cervix were completely closed. So they had to soften the cervix. And to do that, they gave me this white pill. Ended up giving me 3 dosages of it because it would, it just takes time for it to soften. And so I finally got to like 1 centimeter. And this was obviously, now we're January 16th. So once I was dilated at 1 centimeter, they were contemplating just sending me home because it wasn't moving the way that they wanted it to. But instead they've said, okay, we're gonna try putting in a Foley catheter, which is a catheter that they go ahead and put in, but on the end it has like a balloon-like thing. So they inflate the balloon and it just expands. So it's supposed to help expand your cervix and get you more dilated, right? So they said by the time the balloon came out on its own, you would be dilated between 3 and 4 centimeters. So when they inserted the catheter, they accidentally broke my water. So at that point, they couldn't send us home even if they wanted to. They had to keep us. So that was, it was a little frustrating because once your water breaks, you have a certain amount of time before the baby has to be delivered. Otherwise, you're at a higher risk for infection. So they had put the Foley catheter in, and they would come in every 45 minutes to an hour to come and gently just pull on it to see if it would move or if it would come out. And they did that about 3 or 4 times. And I mean, it just was not happening, which sucked. Each time it sucked. Well, at this point, my blood pressure spiked to a really high reading. And so they decided they were going to start me on the blood pressure medication. Well, this is the part that probably was the most scary for me. So they go ahead and give me the dosage of blood pressure medication. I don't remember what it was, but they gave me the medication and my body wasn't responding right away. So they gave me a little bit more. Well, my body just took a few minutes to respond, unfortunately. And when they basically like almost overdosed me on blood pressure medication to the point where I turned completely white. I don't even remember what happened. All I remember is waking up with an oxygen mask on, my wife crying on my side, and everyone freaked out because at this point we had my mom, Amy's mom. I went from like 2 doctors in the room to like 15 people in the room. They had like crash carts and everything, and I was just like sweating. I was like so sweating. And unfortunately, because they gave me so much blood pressure medication, it dropped my blood pressure so low that they couldn't find the baby's heart rate. So they ripped the Foley catheter out of me. And they were trying to put an internal heart rate monitor on the baby's head because they couldn't find it. So of course we're all freaked out. Everyone's like just like so traumatized. I know I was traumatized. I mean, how scary when I finally like realized what was going on, because literally I don't remember everything because I just completely blanked out. I don't know if I passed out because it kind of sounds like I may have passed out because my blood pressure went so low. What I do remember is having an oxygen mask on my face, seeing Amy crying, seeing my mom upset and Amy's mom upset, and having like 15 or 20 doctors in my room. So pretty terrifying. They ended up not putting the internal heart rate monitor on because they were able to find the baby's heart rate outside. But at this point the catheter was ripped out, so I didn't have that in anymore. Okay, sorry, she's not feeling good. But so when I finally came to, you know, that's what I saw that was going on, and I was, of course, freaked out. After that incident, they had me on the blood pressure medicine. They also started me on this thing called magnesium, which was awful, like literally awful. I feel sorry for every person who has to take the magnesium, like I did. It's through an IV, obviously, but it just makes you swell so much, and it makes you feel like pure shit. Like literally, I felt terrible. As soon as I started taking it, I just felt terrible. And you can't drink a lot of fluids when you take it, and it just, I mean, you're constantly, you want to just drink. You want to drink water, you want to drink something. So they started me on the magnesium, they had me on the blood pressure medicine, and then they started me on Pitocin. And I thought, okay, cool, we'll start on Pitocin, and you know, we'll get things going. They start me on Pitocin, and I do finally get to 4 centimeters. And I'm like, yes, like we're going somewhere. And, you know, 5 centimeters is what's considered true labor. But I mean, I was getting the contractions. They were painful. It sucked. So I was like, oh yes, like I have to be getting further, right? Fast forward to the 17th at, I don't know, it had to be around 10:30 p.m. I had been dilated at 4 for a while. I had been on Pitocin for more than 24 hours at this point, and my water was broken for more than 24 hours. The doctor came in and he's like, okay, I'm gonna check you. He checked me, and I was like, for sure I have to be at like 5 or 6, right? And I'm ready for the epidural. He just gives me this look. Like, he just gave me this, I just saw it on his face. He just came over to tell me, and he's like, you're still dilated at 4. And I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry because nothing was happening, and everything had been such a struggle the entire time. Like, nothing was going smooth at all. Felt so defeated. And I mean, it's one of those things where you don't have control over. So I mean, you can't really, there's nothing that you can do. That was a fart. There's nothing that you...
So, I mean, you can't really... There's nothing that you can do.
There's nothing that you can do to help the situation. And that's one of the most frustrating things is it's your body. It's your body that needs to respond, not you necessarily. And for me, I can be a control freak, and I hate that, you know? So I was upset, and, you know, the doctor was like, you know, at this point, you've been on Pitocin for longer than needed. Your water's been broken for a while. We can either continue forward and keep trying, or you can opt for a C-section. And we took the C-section because I just couldn't go forward anymore. Between being on the magnesium and feeling like pure garbage the whole time, and just sitting there like having to be checked a million times and nothing happening, I was just done. Like, I knew that we were, you know, getting closer to the point of being at risk for an infection because my water was, you know, broken for so long. So we went forward with the C-section, and I was terrified because that wasn't in my plan. I didn't want a C-section. I will say that, you know, surprisingly, it wasn't that bad. I thought it was going to be terrible, and it was probably the easiest part of my labor. Aside from them doing the spinal tap, which took for freaking ever, I feel like. Yeah, it took forever, and they finally got it. Thank goodness. And, you know, I went in probably about a little past 11:30, actually probably closer to like 12. And she was born at 1:05 on January 18th. And she weighed 7 pounds, 5 ounces. And she was 19 inches long. And her poor little head, I don't know if you can see, it's still kind of a little conish, and that's because she was stuck in my birthing canal because my water had been broken for so long. So she kept trying to come out, but I wasn't dilating. I felt so bad for her. Poor little baby was trying to come out, and she just couldn't. But it was awesome being able to see her. You know, after they pulled her out, me and Amy were both crying because we were so excited to finally meet her. And, you know, you kind of just put aside all the craziness that happened prior. But I mean, I was in there, so I went in January 15th, which is a Monday, and she was born on January 18th, in the morning. So I mean, that was a long time and it sucked. It was terrible. We got 0 sleep the whole time we were there just because people were constantly coming in and checking, and obviously I'm on all this medication that's just making me feel crappy. And you know, they had told me that the magnesium and the Pitocin, they kind of counteract each other, so it takes longer usually. And then you know, after she was born, my milk like took forever to come in, so poor baby lost too much weight. So your babies, obviously they lose weight after they're born because they have so much water retention. They lose that, and generally you don't lose more than 10%. Well, she lost 12%. So when she was 7 pounds 5 ounces when she was born, and when we left the hospital she was 6 pounds 1 ounce. So of course that was stressful for me. And then after I had her, they kept me on magnesium for 24 hours. She was born because I guess they had to keep me on it, and I could not wait to be off of that stuff. Oh my god, my feet were so swollen because of that stuff, and it just was so uncomfortable. It made my legs feel like they were gonna pop, and I just wanted to drink something so bad. The nurse was so nice that once I was finally done being on the magnesium, she brought me in like the biggest mixture of like cranberry juice and ginger ale or like Sprite or something, and oh my gosh, it was just so great to be able to drink liquids. So I mean, for me, my birthing story wasn't my favorite, and honestly being in the hospital was terrible for me, and I think it was because of the magnesium that they put me on, and obviously having the high blood pressure. Overall, like the C-section, I was fine. I was up and moving right away after having her. I had pain, but it was minimal. It never got past, you know, they have a scale from like 1 to 10. I was always about a 3. I took my Motrin and my ibuprofen. I never needed anything more than that. And I stopped taking it literally a few days after I got out of the hospital, just because I didn't have pain that much pain. And I had like the way they did it, they stitch you up with dissolvable stitches, so I never had to go back to get anything removed or anything like that. You just got to take care of the area so it doesn't get infected. And you know, I was fine. Yeah, up and moving. I never had an issue holding my baby. You know, you hear that sometimes. Or moving around and walking. I was up walking right away. So yeah, for me, the C-section portion was cake compared to everything else. Either way, she's here and she's healthy and she's happy. Right now, just have a little bit of a cold, but you know, everything worked out. We're both okay. My blood pressure stabilized a week after she was born. I had a doctor's appointment. I had to go in and get my, I think it was within the 7 days of being released from the hospital, I should say. I had an appointment to have my blood pressure checked, and everything went back to normal after I had her. So that was good, and I have not had another high blood pressure reading since then. So if you are someone who is pregnant and is getting the high blood pressure reading, I hope it goes a lot smoother for you than it did for me. It's horrible, and there's nothing that you can do about it other than try and relax and, you know, just bed rest. That's what I did during that whole time. I had to wait for the 15th. You can't do anything. So I wish all of you who are pregnant luck. I hope you guys all have a easy as can be labor. She caught back up in weight, by the way, just so I should throw that back out there. She was able to make the 7 pounds 5 ounces within 2 weeks after being born. So that's what I think the expectation is. The baby has to be back to their normal weight by the 2 weeks, and she was. So we're good with that. And my milk came in and all that stuff ended up being fine. But yeah, this labor story is not an easy one. And you know, would I do it again? Yeah, I obviously would do it again. I just wished it would be, or I do wish that it will be without the high blood pressure, but chances are it will be with, unfortunately. But yeah, so if you are someone with high blood pressure, just hang in there. Like, you know, hang in there, and sorry. I don't wish it on anybody. But anyways, thanks for coming by, and thanks for listening to my birthing story, or my labor story. Say hi, Hayden. Oh, poor baby's still not feeling good. hoping this congestion passes. But yeah, so anyways, thank you guys for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I know it's a long one. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.